Jamie, it probably seems like ages ago, but what did you get out of the first time you played Moana Pasifika this season?
Well, they've slightly changed their game since the first time we played. I thought in the end that match was quite a sticky game at the end. You know, we lost our first 5-8, our two first 5-8s in the space of about 5 minutes, and then the game unravelled for us and we were able to hang on. Since that time and to now, you know, they've got a couple of new players, the new first 5-8ers playing particularly well. Obviously a lot of inspiration created by Adi Savia, so they've turned into a different rugby team and it's going to be a massive challenge for us.
What do you want to see from your team this weekend?
Well, based on last week, you know, the intent and endeavour to try and score a try was there in spades. Weren't smart enough, didn't position well enough, and it's all very well saying that after the game, and we've just got to be able to do that in the match. So I think our guys have reflected well from that match against the Crusaders and know exactly what they need to do, and then the key for us is to be able to put it out on the field.
It's been a rough couple of weeks. How are you feeling?
I'm okay, yeah. I don't know about the players. You know, my job as a coach, I've lost enough games to understand what the challenge is for this team. But I get a lot of confidence, you know, when it comes to this part of the week where we've named the team and, you know, we've had a couple of trainings and we'll get a better picture around the injuries and the energy starts picking up.
Are the coaching staff having to work hard to keep heads and tails up out there amongst the squad?
You know what? I feel disappointed for the players and the coaches because we're an extremely hard-working team, and you know, when you don't get some results, then that pays a little bit on people's confidence. But again, you know, at the end of by the time we get through our first two or 3 days, energy's up and we're ready to go again.
Jamie, at what point do you start looking to next season and recruiting and development for next season, or do you guys still have belief that you can make that top six? Playing towards that.
Yeah, well, with recruiting, I'm always kind of looking. That's kind of my job, and like I sort of said it before. Really disappointed for the players because they're a hard-working team, and they put a lot into each week, but. We identified at the start, you know, we're a pretty young side. I think we're the youngest team in the competition with the least amount of experience. So it's a slow process, and these guys are going to be better for it. And it's a very tough competition.
Is there belief that you can make that top six?
Well, I think, you know, apart from last week, you know, there's a lot of teams still in the cliff, so we've got to win. We've got to win a match, you know. So we've lost to the two top teams, and they're clearly the two better teams in the competition. There's a swag in the middle, and then there's us sort of lingering behind. If we can get up against the Moana Pasifika, which is what we're about, then we're back in the game again, you know.
In Moana, there's Semesi Tupo Tailua, obviously from Southland. Was he ever on the Highlanders radar, and how did he maybe slip through your fingers?
Well, he's originally from Dunedin, he went to Targa Boys. He then went down to Southland and played some footy. He was an injury replacement for Moana Pasifika when he was on our radar, and he's gone from strength to strength, and good on him, you know, like the players like that have sort of gone into the Moana Pasifika and perhaps didn't get an opportunity. It's all very well seeing a player like Semesi or any other player, but when you've already contracted players, it's hard to add to a list that has a finite number. So there's always players coming and going. It's just getting the right blend, I guess. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do.
And then just some comment on Folau re-signing to 2027. How does he kind of fit into the future for the Highlanders? Where do you see him in the future?
Well, you know, obviously he's committed for another 2 years. A big part of that was New Zealand's commitment to Folau as well as the Highlanders. They see him as a potential All Black, which is good for Folau and good for us as a team. Yeah, so he's been a big part of our team for the. I'm not sure when he came. I wasn't here when he was signed, but he's been here for a while. But he was playing second fiddle to Aaron all those years now, so he's sort of he's our statesman at 9, and we've got some good young competitive 9s coming up behind him. So he needs to keep his eye on the ball.
Jimmy, what's that recruitment market like? Is it as tough as ever?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Well, I think from when I coached the Highlanders last time, what's changed? There's Moana Pasifika, there's the Drua, there's Australian teams grabbing a lot of our players. There's players that are leaving earlier to the likes of Japan. in Australia, and there's not a hell of a lot coming home, you know. So what that does is put a squeeze on teams like the Highlanders, because we're down in the bottom of the South Island. We've got a low catchment area of players, and generally we've got to get younger players and develop them, and that's kind of the stage we're at now.
Are you seeing some, really good signs though from your younger players? I noticed that Josh Tenblad and Dylan Pledger were announced in the under-20s to start. I know that Tane Harvey's there as well, and Sean Kempton. Are those guys the future of the Highlanders?
Potentially, yeah. So I think we've got 18 under-20 guys. It's a different beast, you know. Josh Tenblad versus Scott Barrett. You know, so a lot of potential, good rugby player. He's going to take time. He's tight forward. So depending on positions, they can accelerate that development a little bit. Halfbacks, wingers, but generally up front when it comes to the forwards, and that's an area that takes a bit of time.
A very young front row replacements this week, but those guys are obviously the long-term future for the Highlanders in those positions. Are you prepared just to be, to see them that way and to see them in 2-3 years really coming to fruition? Yeah,
I do. Well, Jack is young, but Jack's had a bit of experience last year, and he's getting a lot more this year. He's definitely a player of the future. Rowan hasn't had a lot of game time for us. Tight head is a position. Tight head prop's a position where it does take a lot of time. So he's learning his trade, behind the other two guys. Cepho getting injured with a sore neck gives him an opportunity. But generally, the guys that haven't had a lot of game time, they get an opportunity through injury. Is basically it's like last week with young Josh Whaanga. You get to put them out there and give them an opportunity and see what they can do.
And just one last one from me on that development side. How important do you still see the NPC in terms of progressing these guys' games?
Yeah, they're massive. Yeah. So you talked about Dylan Pledger and Josh Tenblad. Massive futures. Imagine if they didn't get an NPC game. And I have no control of that. So it's important that they do play in that level of competition in the national provincial championship, so they can get that experience and bring that into. We're really reliant on, in those cases, those boys getting game time, for Otago. That hasn't always happened in the past, which has been a little bit disappointing for us and their development.
Jamie, just on recruitment again, and you talk about the Highlanders being such a young group, but trying to recruit and bring some of these names down here, is it a hard sell? Are you finding it's a hard sell?
What I usually find is guys who can't get game time, call them Caleb Tangitau, a hard sell, but we've got to be able to give him the confidence that, one, he's going to get game time, two, he's going to have the right coaching to accelerate his development, give him confidence so he can become an All Black. And we've got some good stories around that, him being the one this year. Vivini Lasanga is another one. And then you get the more experienced players that seem to be a little bit harder, because unless they are not getting game time, they're pretty cemented in the places where they're from. They've often got families, harder to move. But it's always been that case. I'm just finding it's a little bit more difficult than it has been in the past year.
And was Tangitau close to have been available for you this week?
Not really. Yeah, he's a Ferrari, so he wants to. He's got a sore groin, a tight groin, and he's a speedster. Perhaps one of the fastest in the competition. So if he's not confident to, put the foot down, then I'm kind of not confident to select him. So get him right. We've got some big games at the end of the season. And
then just Jacob, since coming back from injury, has he exceeded your expectations of what he can do or could do?
He hasn't exceeded. He's definitely met those expectations. I guess Jacob's a good example when you get your key players like Jacob playing. If Caleb was playing, Jonah Nariki was playing, Q didn't have an injury, was in and out every 2-3 weeks, then, that builds the confidence off the field with leadership and presence, and then often that transfers on the field. So it's just getting the guys on the track, really. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jamie.
Yeah.
Thank you.